Welcome back to Fantasy Fiction Friday. I'm your host, Genevieve Gravel. My friends call me Gigi. I hope you'll be my friend. Today we are moving on to the third fairy tale in the Ladies of the Lily, Dystopian Tales of the Fae. The title of this one is Fff Flurr, Glory's Tale. Let's go. Full disclosure, some of this will be redacted to keep it safe for the internet. Okay. Fleur's Fury, Glory's Tale. The sun upon my face brought me out of slumber to greet a new day. I kissed my father and then ran off to find Vivian, as I did most mornings. We danced with the wake of the day, and we held hands as we fluttered across the river, dipping our toes into the water. Hand in hand, we laughed and played. We took rest on petals of a soft red flowers that opened to the midday sun. Beauty filled the air, but nothing could compare to my Vivian. I ran my fingers through her dark hair, and her green and blue wings glistened in the sun's glorious light. Then the sound of a rustle and a splash on the shore brought us out of our little love bubble, where the world around us ceased to exist, a world of our making, where the butterflies fluttered and the sun rays shone just for us. We jumped up from our privacy to peek through the petals to find a strange vessel, and more than 3 men pulling it to the rocks from the water. The men were foreign, strange looking. One wore a circle of flowers on his head. His hair ended just before his shoulders. I had never seen a fae with short hair before. They all wore sashes across their loins. My curiosity piqued, and I turned to Vivian, who simply stared back at me. "Who are they?" I whispered, and she responded with a shoulder shrug. The one with his flowers and his hair looked up to us. We were not as secret as I thought, so I called down to him, "Hello?" He tipped his head down and continued walking towards our colony of houses made of rock and stone just off the shore. The ruckus they had made brought the entire colony out to see what was happening, all 200 of us who resided on the shore of the River of Life. Vivian and I fluttered down to greet the strangers who had just met my father. "Glory," Father said, motioning to me. "Commence, girl. I would like to introduce you to Fleur." I gave a slight bow, as was our custom. "He's the prince," the stranger interrupted my father. "My father is the king of the realm of the Fae of the Great Oak. King?" I questioned. "Yes, he's the leader of the realm," Fleur responded. I said leader, he repeated with emphasis on the EA. Leader, I imitated. What does that mean?" I questioned him. "It means he's in charge," Fleur said, sounding a bit annoyed and perhaps confused. I knew I was confused, but also intrigued and excited. We talked through lunch as we broke bread and dined on berry pie with the newcomers. We told them of how we came from the Dark Mountain, and how the giant had destroyed our homes and uprooted our lives, and how we had trekked for 3 seasons to find ourselves by the riverside. And they told us how they lived, the entire colony in an oak tree, and how they came to be. And they talked of the Fae of the Willow Glen, and how they also lived in trees. Now, our colony had always made homes in caves and holes found in the dark rock of the Dark Mountain, and we had no knowledge of how to hollow out trees. But they told us of different tools we could make, using rocks, wood, and bones to hollow out our trees and build our own homes, and it was all so fascinating. They talked of how the Fae of the Great Oak and the realm, or whatever they had called it, how they had dance halls filled with music and hearths for baking bread, and how there was enough rooms for the entire colony to live comfortably, and it sounded all like magic to me. They said they lived alongside the giant, who never took notice of their presence, despite there being nearly 500 in their colony. Now, we had come to find ourselves at the river, through hardships, truth be told, in more ways than one. I was glad for it. I loved the river. The Dark Mountain had been a hard life for the Fae. We had to work for water, work for food, work for protection from the many predators. Here at the river, the prince, was that how he said it? The prince called it the river of life. It was fitting, I thought. We had plenty of water and food grew as far as the eye could see. Green blades of grass and flowers of every color and scent, and we could sleep when we tired and wake when we rested. I imagined no place finer. However, Fleur painted a beautiful picture in my mind of this oak tree and his colony. We took our leave from the table, Vivian, Fleur, and I, and we walked alongside the river as we talked, stopping to smell the flowers. I stepped toward Fleur and ran my fingers over the sash that covered his groin. He looked from my hands to my eyes and sucked his lower lip between his teeth, and I pulled my hand back. All apologies, I said. I'd never seen a clothed man before. I was curious how it stayed on. We cover our bodies in linens and silk. It was fine for you to touch me. I liked it. His eyes glared into mine, and he licked his lips between his slow words that were said with a long drawl. The statement made me feel uncomfortable, and I stepped away from him. I shouldn't have touched him like that. By nightfall, we danced to the music of the flute and the drums, and Fleur told us of their celebrations and how their dance was different and their music slower and more soothing. But he liked ours too. He had found it hard not to move his body to the upbeat rhythms. We carried on this way for several sundowns, and the stories he told were each more fanciful than the previous. Then I asked about the vessel. I made it myself, he lied. I didn't even know or even suspected he lied. I had told a fib or two in my life. I mean, we all had. Children did such things. But a full-grown man lie? Whatever for? Why? I asked. We can all fly. He, in fact, had not built what he called a ship, as he claimed. One of the men who had come ashore with him interrupted with his own tale, saying a member of his colony had designed it and nearly 20 men had constructed it. And it was Fleur who had taken it for its first voyage. He called himself the captain. He said it floated with the currents and could carry cargo that would take 100 Fae to carry in less than half the time. It floats with the current. So how do you return? Go upstream, I mean, I asked Fleur. It's called an oar, he responded, and went on to explain how to turn many of them at the same time in the water to propel them in any direction they wished to go. It was all genius. I felt enthralled. They were magical Fae, I thought. Vivi and I stole a moment away to go down to the river shore and play as we did most nights. She looked lovely in the moonlight. I noticed Fleur standing not so far away watching us, and I jumped away from her and asked what he was doing. Admiring the view, he responded, "Carry on." His words made my stomach turn. I quickly changed the subject, not wanting to be rude. I engaged him in conversation of how our colony's trek from the mountain to the river had been filled with hardship and how we had lost more than a few along the way. I was much younger then, just a child. I said, for a moment I missed home, and my heart filled with sorrow for all that my people had endured. He told me of how some of the Fae of my colony had found the great oak, and how they had taken my people in and built rooms for them, and how they all lived happily together. The three of us lay on the river shore, looking up to the stars into the wee hours of the night, where we fell into slumber. We awoke as the sun shone full in the high sky. Fleur had gone, and I felt relief to be once again alone with my beloved. Our bellies filled with hunger, so we entered the circle in search of food. Vivian pointed to my house. My father was engaged in a conversation with Fleur. It looked serious. Why so serious? No, I didn't say that. I strained to hear what they spoke of, but I could only make out muffled words. In all honesty, I found Fleur's words difficult to understand at times. You know, we spoke the same language, but he spoke it differently, with a strange manner and a dialect that took me a moment to process what he was saying. Plus, they were far away, so I put my fingers to my mouth, motioning for Vivian to be quiet so I could hear. She strained to listen and said, "I think he's asking your father for something." She quieted and put her hand to her pointed ear as if that was going to help her hear. "I think he wants to wed." "Yeah, he wants to wed you," she said. "What? Like marry me?" I laughed out loud. The idea was so far-fetched. Preposterous, I thought. And at dinner, one of Fleur's men, I couldn't remember his name, it sounded strange, he announced that he was going to marry one of our colony's women and take her back to the Great Oak. Relief washed over me. I'm sure that was what Fleur must have been speaking to Father about. So I let out a huge sigh and took a big gulp from my wooden goblet. And after dinner, we danced in the circle as was customary. Fleur pulled me from the dance floor off to the side, and with my index finger, I motioned to Vivian, who I had been dancing with, that I would be right back. I wish for you to be my princess, he said, the princess of the realm. And there was that word again, realm. Princess? I asked. My wife, my bride. We're to be wed. He said, no, I said with a giggle, for surely he must have been kidding. He grabbed me by my arm and squeezed me hard, and I pulled away from the pain in disbelief. He had a shocked look on his face, and his eyes filled with the anger of a child not being allowed to have seconds on dessert. I don't think he had ever been told no before. It is to be done. You will come with me to the Great Oak, and one day you will be crowned queen, he said. That was that funny way of speaking again, I thought, and I pressed my hands to the side of my face, trying to understand, feeling a little more than frustrated. Queen. Are we bees? I thought. No, I said again angrily and walked away. He tried to follow me, calling out into the night, my every wish is law. Not here, it's not, I called back, not slowing my stride or looking back at him. Here you were the prince of naught but a fairy tale. Leave me alone. He stopped in his tracks and watched me walk away. I began to run until I took flight. I found Vivian easily enough and fell into her arms with tears streaming my face as I told her what had transpired. Does any part of you want to? She asked me. No! I love it here. My family's here. You're here. I would never, could never be without you, I cried, holding her tight. Then the strange men left in the morning, with Fleur leading the way. I didn't go to say farewell. I was glad to see them go. From our hiding place, the red flower, we found privacy. I watched them set sail. I stared, refusing to blink until I could no longer see the ship on the horizon. And 2 seasons passed, and the strangers became more. 2 seasons passed, and the strangers became nothing more than a memory. This way, I can smell her, the words coming from outside, muffled. I sat up, and Vivian followed. I searched my surroundings, waiting for my eyes to adjust to the dim light. A single petal was pushed down with great enough force to rip it, and the sounds of the petals popping stunned me. It was Fleur, with his guard, who stepped in behind him. I opened my mouth to scream before I could release a sound. He was behind me, his hands on my forehead, forcing my eyes open, and his other hand slid a blade into my mouth. The metal pressed down on my tongue. The sharpness slit me, the taste of copper mixed with saliva filled my mouth and dribbled down my chin and round down my neck. I reached out to Vivian, and her fingertips touched mine as the guard's blade ripped through her back and protruded through her chest. She let out a gargling sound and foamed at the mouth, and blood began to puddle on the floor around her, the scent of which filled the air, overpowering our senses. I watched by the flickering light as the light from her amber eyes died. I felt the warmth of urine run down my legs. An involuntary response from fear and shock. I wanted to scream, but the blade was cutting my tongue and my body trembled. No. This could not be happening, Vivian. My Vivian. Fleur whispered in my ear, if you make a sound, if you try to run, if you disobey me in any way, this will be the fate of your entire village. He pointed to the corpse of my lover, covered in blood mixed with pollen. Even in death, her beauty remained. Vivian, I cried to myself, I will hold your father's head as I hold yours now, as he watches while I slaughter every last one of you before I take his head as a souvenir. Do you understand? Fleur threatened. I nodded my head to signal that I understood. struck with shock, trying to comprehend what had just happened and what I just saw. I dared not move. I could not make a sound, even if I had tried. Tears burned my eyes. Fleur stood, pulling me up, my face with him. He removed the blade from my mouth. Something covered my head and my face, and the world around me was black. I screamed for my father. I screamed for anyone to hear me. Shh, he whispered. He threw me over his shoulder and carried me away. They had docked their vessel far up the river. When we arrived sometime later, he threw me to the vessel floor, and I hit with a thump. All I could feel was the pain in my jaw. I wasn't sure where it had come from. I must have hit the floor face first. He took my hands behind my back, bent my legs at the knees, and with a rope he bound my extremities together. You can scream now. Cry out all you want. No one will hear you, he said. But I didn't. I did not make a sound. My skin had turned black as the night that had engulfed me. Despite the fear, perhaps from panic, my pointed ear tips reddened in a deep heat fueled by rage. Red slowly ran through me. My skin grew bright, my voice sharp through the thin lips that I pursed closed, refusing the sound to escape. If he had wished for the sounds of my screams, then I would go silent. I would never do as he said. The boat rocked back and forth, side to side, up and down, causing my head to spin. The taste of bile filled my throat. Mosquitoes flitted about, and I wished for one to drain me of every drop of blood. By nightfall, the ship docked. One thing Fleur had not lied about. It was not a long journey. The two men removed me from the ship and threw me onto a carriage that the guards pulled behind him. I laid on the hardwood floor that jostled with every step the guards took. My head rested on a bag filled with something soft and comforting. Cotton, I assumed. I had been on a carriage like this before, across this very countryside. My heart filled with melancholy and my mind with remembrances of the dark mountain and the long journey as we had left our home, the hiding and wait for the scavenger birds to leave something from much larger prey. We would take what we could, remnants of food, pelts, and smaller broken bones. My heart was broken, filled with the confounding thoughts of childhood and loss. I missed the days of play when the safety and confines of the hidden caves and rocks. If we had never left, Vivian would still be alive. I began to cry silently, and still I dared not utter a peep. And Fleur, he talked to me as if we were on some wonderful journey. He told me how happy we would be. What was he talking about? He was delusional, I thought. Happy? As if he had not just killed my beloved right in front of me, as he took me as if I was a possession he could take with his free will. I had never imagined such crimes against Mother Nature. Could it be possible? And here I was, tied and bound in the middle of nowhere, and he dared talk to me of happiness. It would be well into the night when we arrived at the great oak. The men carried me to its peak, and I was placed gently on a bed of moss in a large room. The bed was soft and warm. My body sunk into it, surrounded me with comfort. From the small bed I could see a sliver of the moonlight through the round window that faced the town of the giant below. Fleur cut me free from the ropes, kissed my forehead. The action, the gesture caught me off guard. It was a tender kiss, loving, caring, the kind a mother would offer to her child. It sent shockwaves down my spine. I pulled away from his touch. He was unfazed by my reaction. And then he left. I was alone. I heard a loud click from the door. I didn't know what it was. My eyes searched the room. I had been awake for days, or so it had felt. I wanted to explore my new surroundings in the dim moonlight, but weakness fell over me and I fell asleep. I dreamt of Vivian. and blood flowed over my visions. Screams scratching through my ears woke me, my skin drenched in sweat, unsure of my surroundings. It took a moment for me to realize where I was. The memories of the events over the recent past washed over me. Tears stung my eyes. The sun was shining high in the sky, shining through the window. It blinded me for a moment. I rubbed my eyes, took a deep breath, and dried my tears. I rose up on the bed and looked from the window. The view was stunning. Yellows and reds from all the sun's rays blended into the blue sky, overlooking the vast horizon of silver blades of grass and floral blossoms in every color. The skyscape from the town and the giant down below, rooftops and obelisks rose from the skyline. I had never tried to imagine what the giant had needed with the rock that they had quarried from my childhood home, and there it was, staring me in all its beauty. While I did not understand the significance of why they had erected such things, I did appreciate the beauty of it. For the tiniest moment, I forgot where I was and why. Then reality slapped me in the face, and I was again overcome with a mixture of fear and sorrow. I had to get out of here. I did not know if my people had found Vivian's corpse, or if they would come looking for me. I'd hoped they would realize and come find me. You rescue me. Help me. I cried into my hands. It was a hope I could not rely on. It was up to me to find a way out of there and back home. The window was far too small for me to fit through. I tried the door. I shook it and pushed. I kicked. And I tried to force it open with all my body weight and strength. And I heard a voice from outside the door tell me to stop. My attempts to open the large wooden arch door proved futile. Searching the room for another escape, but there was nothing. No other door, no cracks in the walls. Nothing. I was trapped. The floors had been polished and the walls were embossed with images of flowers and leaves. There was a sitting table made of rock and wood with a small rock stool in front of it. I sat on the stool and opened the drawers frantically, looking for something, anything that could help me escape this prison. They were empty, with one exception. A single book bound in bright green dyed leather with the image of a daisy embossed on the cover. A single strand of cording wrapped around it, tying it closed. I opened it and began to read. Daisy, it was titled. In its pages I found the writings of a woman named Daisy. She had been Fleur's mother, I realized. She had been queen, and what she faced terrified me. I too was to become queen. Was this foreshadowing of what I was to face, I wondered? I read the book in its entirety twice. It ended abruptly with Daisy expecting a child. Contractions had started and the diary ended. What did it mean? Why it had been left there? What had become of Daisy? A click from the door surprised me. And tingles ran up my spine. The pores of my skin raised, and I jumped out of my seat. The door opened, and a young woman with flowers in her long braided yellow hair, with wings of golden hue, and a long skirt that flowed to the floor to match her green skin. And she was lovely. She had a calming presence. Through all the fear, trepidation, and frantic confusion, I was taken back by her presence. She entered carrying a tray of fresh-baked bread, pastries, each delicacy decorated, and in a large bowl of water filled with a cloth folded at its side. She set the tray on the table in front of me, crossed her legs, and bowed her head, bent at the knees, and then left me. The door slammed shut, and I heard the click again. I ran to the door, trying to open it once again, but it wouldn't budge, just as I had suspected. I ate everything with a fury. Every bite was more delicious than the one before. I hadn't even thought of my hunger. The aching in my stomach had been overshadowed by my need to break free. And the breads and the meats and the berries and mixtures of both sweet and savory. And a cup filled with mead was provided, and it too was just as sweet. I had never tasted anything so decadent. Every bite was delicious. It confused me that the mixture of degradation and luxury. It was hopeless. I had no way out, and I didn't know when I would be set free, if I would be set free. Was this room to be mine, as it was Daisy's? The only place I would ever see again, and the girl that... the only face I would ever interact with? Why had Fleur brought me here? If he had intended for me to be his bride, but what would that look like? What did it mean to him, given his mother's tale? I washed myself with a cloth and water, and I laid back on the bed, covered with pelts and furs there, and I cried myself back to sleep. My breath was stripped, and I opened my eyes. My heart thundered in my chest, and the room was dark, and I could feel Fleur's eyes on me as his hand crossed my mouth. What was he doing? His full body weight pressed down on me, and it all happened so fast that I had no time to process it. You will come to love me. He walked slowly in my direction. He knelt to me, taking my face in his hands, forcing me to look him in the eyes. I promise you, he whispered. Never, I screamed. I spit into his face. He didn't even flinch as it hit him in the eye and slid down his cheek. His tongue darted out and licked my spit from his lips, looking me square in the eyes with a devious grin across his stupid fucking face. And then he laughed and left me. Nothing I could do fazed him. Why had he come to my village? Why had I trusted with him, been enthralled by his stories? Why had I welcomed him into my life? How could a monster such as he look just like me? How could I not see? I had been so naive. This had been all my fault, and Vivian had lost her life for it. But I had not lost mine. I was determined to find a way out. I thought I could carve the window with my bare hands if need be. I mean, that would take forever. There was no way to hide the opening. There must be a way. I would find a way. My determination had taken over my every thought, and I began to take special care of my surroundings. The girl came to feed and dress me at the same time every day. The guard posted outside the door was the same, and it changed at the same times each morning and night. I had to find a way to distract them. Get them to leave when the door was unlocked. Then I could sneak away. Perhaps I could elicit the girl's help. She'd never spoken to me. I tried with niceties. Hello, thank you, it's a nice day. But she never responded in words. She flashed a shy smile, but would never even look me in the eye. I think she knew that what was being done to me was a crime against Mother Nature. It was as it was on her as well. So why had she done nothing? Why had she not refused to take part? What lies had they told her? What had they offered her to make her comply? She was just a child. How could I expect rescue or a moment of mortality from her? Maybe if I could get her to speak to me, maybe she could be my ally. Just maybe she could be the key to my salvation. Maybe she could simply slip the key under my napkin. The familiar sound of the door creaking open had not startled me. I was waiting for it. He was coming for me, and I had nowhere to hide. I was powerless. The guard posted outside would shut the door behind Fleur, and I would hear the click of the lock that held me imprisoned in a palace of luxurious horrors that had become my existence. Seasons changed, and with it warmth filled my rooms. I hadn't felt the sun grace my skin in so long I couldn't even remember. Daisy, too, had felt that way. I read her diary most every passing day to fill the time, fill the silence. I had memorized every word of hers. I knew there was no answers for me in her pages, a myriad of emotions that changed with not so much of a moment's notice. At times I wished for death, at others for life. I'd fantasized about murder. Was I hopeless or fearless? The answer changed with the wind. Emotions, intrusive thoughts I refused to give power to. I refused to give up hope, and I began to understand the depth of the emotions behind the writings as I too felt them. Though I did not want for her son's affections as she had yearned for her king's, Flur's father, his mentor, his teacher. He had followed in Rain's footsteps, emulating his every move. I only wanted to be free. I wished to feel the sun on my face and the feelings of the splashing waters of the river of life beneath my feet. I longed for the sounds of my father's voice who had not come for me. I wondered if he tried, gotten lost. Maybe perhaps he had just accepted my absence and went on with his daily life. I missed him. I missed my community. I mourned for the life I once lived. I had to find my way back to them. It had been 4 at sundown since Fleur had last visited my bed. I found comfort in the respite of his prowls. I'd hoped he had taken a lover and would leave me be, replace his obsession with me. Let me lie here and die. No. I had to wash, to scour those thoughts from my mind. I wanted to go home. I wanted to live a life free, surrounded by those who I loved, and who truly loved me. But my dreams were dashed when I heard the click of the lock. The damn click of the lock, and my heart leapt into my throat. He was coming for me again. I looked up from where I sat on the edge of my bed, and to my surprise, it wasn't Fleur at my door. It was the girl. I still had not learned her name. I had asked it of her, but she gave no response. I asked through the door what the girl's name was, and the guards had failed to acknowledge. I even asked Fleur what her name was. What should I call her? And he responded it was not for me to mind and that it didn't matter. The hours had grown much later than usual, and she had already brought me my provisions for the day. Why was she here? And then the first words she spoken to me, the first voice I had heard, other than Fleur's menacing growls since the last I heard Vivian's sweet, soft voice. My memory had started to erase the sound of her. I often searched my mind for the sound of her, the feel of her, the smell of her, but it had all washed away. My memory is as if Vivian had become to feel like a dream. The girl held out a gown. What was I going to do with that? I had no need for a gown such as this. It was beautiful. Fleur and she had come to me fully dressed, yet I had never been given clothing. And the gown, white in color, draped on my chest, exposing the majority of my breast, and it clung to my body tightly and flowed past my feet and drug on the floor behind me as I walked. It was silky and soft. I would be lying if I said that it didn't feel good. She slid what she had called slippers onto my feet. They were white in color, matching the gown. They pressed on my toenails, and my toes ached from them. I found it strange. They were strange, and I wanted to remove them. I sat at the sitting table and removed the backs of my feet from them as she brushed my hair, pulling it back from my face and adding curls that flowed down my back. And then Fleur came to fetch me. He was dressed in a silk sash over his broad shoulders that had tucked into his white trousers that ended just beyond his knee, with a golden colored cuff. And he too was wearing white slippers. He stood behind me at my sitting table, and the girl left the room with haste. My eyes followed her out the door. You will show no signs of fright or discomfort. Your skin will remain a softened hue. You will smile and speak only when spoken to, or face my wrath. Do you understand? He instructed me, staring deep into the reflections of my eyes in the mirror from behind me. He took me by the hand and led me outside the room. I was outside my walls for the very first time. I looked around, eyes wide, trying to take it all in, surprised by the beauty. Do you hear that nonsense outside? I don't think I'm going to be able to finish this story, and I hate that. I really want to give you an entire story per episode, but I do think that I'm going to have to finish this story up on next week's Fantasy Fiction Friday, because they're doing a ton of construction right outside my window. They're tearing up the whole road, and they're supposed to be doing that all day, and I won't have any other chance to finish recording this. So I will see you guys next week. Remember, you are valid, you are worthy, and you are loved. Bye!